Luis Barragán House and Studio. Luis Barragán House and Studio is the former residence of architect Luis Barragán in Mexico City. It is now a museum exhibiting Barragán's work and is also used by visiting architects. UNESCO added the Casa Luis Barragán to its World Heritage List in 2004 because it is one of the most influential and representative example of modern Mexican architecture. Located in the west of Mexico City, the residence was built in 1948 after the Second World War. It reflects Barragán's design style during this period and remained his residence until his death in 1988. The house was built on property that Barragán probably purchased in 1939 as part of a larger development at a time when his career was shifting from real estate to architecture. He eventually sold the rest of the land, keeping that area for himself. The predecessor to the house is the Ortega House, which made use of a pre-existing building. Barragán lived there from 1943 to 1947. The house was designed and built in 1947 for Luz Escandon, but in 1948, Barragán decided to move into it himself, despite the fact that at the time he was developing the elite subdivision Jardins del Pedregal in the south of the city. Barragán lived there until his death in 1988, and during this time the house underwent many modifications, functioning as a kind of laboratory for his ideas. Barragán's work is notable for its use of traditional materials, rich spaces, broad planar forms and, unlike most of his contemporaries, the use of bright colors. It still has strong influence on Mexican architecture, especially housing, making more modern styles difficult to sell. Description: the house is located in Colonia Daniel Garza in Mexico City. The main facade is on Calle General Francisco Ramirez numbers 12 and 14. Today the area is working class, which has been entirely engulfed by the urban sprawl of Mexico City. The house is built from concrete with a plaster rendering. The north end is taken up by the studio, with its own entrance at number 12, and the remaining part, number 14, was Barragán's private residence. Most of the architectural influence on the house is Mexican, but there are also international influences as well. His Mexican influences include the buildings of his youth in Jalisco, the use of masonry building and the tradition of strongly dividing public and private space. His use of color is based on the vibrant colors of traditional Mexico, tempered by the artistic influences of Rufino Tamayo and in particular, Jesus Reyes Ferreira. With the exception of the breakfast nook, the house is designed to not need artificial light during the day, with windows and other openings placed to let in as much light as possible. The facades of the house align with the street and are very plain, with rough cement walls very similar in color and composition of its neighbors. The only distinction is that the walls are much higher. It has only a few small windows and 2 doors to the outside streets on the southwest side. For this reason the house is not easily visible. Since the facade is plain and flat, there is no way to guess the layout inside. Instead the house focuses inward, centered on a garden, which itself is surrounded by high walls except on the west. The house has been compared to an oasis with high walls to keep out the urban chaos. The qualities of his architecture are expressed in the interior, including the garden space. He used strong non-harmonic color schemes. It is designed for the maximum use of natural light as well as free-flowing space, using geometric forms. The total footage of the construction is 1,161 square meters, with 2 floors, a roof terrace and a private garden. The levels of the floors are not regular and rooms have different heights. After entering the door at number 14, one enters a bare and dim foyer, whose main purpose is that of a buffer between the interior of the house and outside world. It is small and sparse. Its flooring is of volcanic stone which continues into entrance hall. This stone is usually used for exterior floors, giving the area a patio feel. This leads to a vestibule with a high ceiling, yellow light onto a volcanic stone floor and one of the walls painted fuchsia. Past a low threshold and parchment screen is the living room, with a double-height ceiling of wooden beams and a floor of pine planks. The walls are white with small doors leading to service spaces. The main window overlooks the garden. Other spaces on the ground floor include reading room, library, and a dining area, which has a low ceiling and a fuchsia wall with ceramic bowls from all parts of Mexico on display. Areas on this floor are divided by staircases and folding screens. The dining room, living room, breakfast nook, and kitchen all open to the garden area, which has a fountain. The garden was originally going to be simply grass, but the architect allowed a number of plants to grow semi-freely, allowing for a more wild feel to the vegetation. It is small, but it appears bigger because it borders the neighbor's garden. The windows that face this garden were moved after the building was finished, and the marks left by their old sites give this facade an unkempt look. The windows were placed and moved with the interior in mind. One window which was moved was that of the dining room, possible to correct the view while seated at the table. Another outside opening is the patio of the pots, which is on the west side of the building. It is a small space, but it provides light and greenery in the center of the structure. The upper floor is more private space with thick wood shutters for the windows. Access to this area and the roof terrace is via stone stairs lacking railings, a typical Barragán characteristic. The upper floor contains a master bedroom with dressing room, a guest room, and an afternoon room. The main bedroom has a window facing the garden and was where the architect slept, simply calling it the White Room. The dressing room attached to the bedroom is also called the Christ Room with its crucifix. The guest room faces east onto the street and originally was a terrace. This and the bedrooms have a monastic feel because of their sparseness and type of furniture, reflecting the Franciscan beliefs of Barragán. The roof terrace has high walls of blood red, dark brownish gray and white, with the floors in red ceramic tiles. The walls have the effect of framing the sky as well as hiding the chimney, water tank, and service stairs. It serves as a small lookout point, overlooking the patio, observatory, chapel, and garden. The side facing the garden has a simple wood railing.